The Georgia Bulldogs with a massive game against the Texas Longhorns this Saturday. Will this be Kirby Smart's biggest test of the season? Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. On today's show, we will talk with Mike Griffith from DawgNation and get his thoughts on this Georgia versus Texas game. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the #1 sports podcast network. And, of course, Locked On SEC, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Now on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, broadcasting daily across Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, we got plenty to get into. We're going to talk about the Georgia Bulldogs. And, of course, this season has been so up and down for them. They've played a lot of close games. They haven't looked like their dominant selves. But we're going to talk about it right now. Pleasure to catch up with this guy. We see him every year at SEC Media Days and throughout the season as Georgia heads on the road and playing all these different environments, usually in postseason as well. So you're down in New Orleans at the Sugar Bowl last year. He is Mike Griffith, DawgNation.com, of course, part of the AJC. Mike, welcome in, man.
Yeah, how's it going, Chris? Everything good? Exciting season so far, huh?
It's been wild. I didn't think we'd have this many coaching firings in the SEC already, but looking like right now that hopefully that'll probably be it for this season. But wanted to have you on to talk a little bit about this Georgia team ahead of the big game against Texas this weekend. How would you assess this Georgia team overall? Because people asked me about them through this season. I was like, they're good, but still waiting for them to put together that full 4-quarter game. Did we finally see that this past week in Starkville?
Not really. I mean, they fell behind early, gave up an opening drive, and Mississippi State. They were 3 plays from 8-1, but at the end of the day, it's a different talent level, right? Texas, on the other hand, has equal talent, and so this is a different kind of test. We've seen Texas go on the road and win big games before. A couple of years ago, went on the road and beat a really good Alabama team, Nick Saban, by 10 points, I believe. So we know Texas has it in them to shine on the bright stages. They've done it before and went pretty far in the playoff. They actually finished last year ranked ahead of Georgia, even though Georgia beat them twice. Still trying to sort that out. This Georgia team, like you said, I mean, it's not real sexy, right? It's not like you look out there and see 3 or 4 first-round picks or, Gunner Stockton's not, going to run a 4.6 40 or throw the fastest ball at the combine or, heck, I don't know, maybe not even get drafted. But the guy's a great football player. He's made some clutch plays. He manages the team well. It's been a team that's improved as the season has progressed, and they've done just enough to win some close games. And like you said, before putting together that 20-point win at Mississippi State last Saturday.
You mentioned Gunner Stockton. We saw he was just named a finalist to the Maxwell Award this week. What have you made of his play this year? Because I'm looking at the numbers, and he's like 9th in the SEC in passing yards. Like, his numbers don't wow you, but his play, certainly when he's had to take over in games, his running ability, he uses his legs. Guy just feels like a leader. And also to kind of compare and contrast, Carson Beck had all his interceptions last year. It seems like Gunner does a better job maybe taking care of the football and being, I don't know, his game manager. Is that a bad word to say in 2025?
No, I don't think so. It's kind of like the difference between a scoring point guard and a guy that just distributes the ball. Comparing last year to Carson, I mean, Carson had a receiving core that led the nation in drops. The defense was at times really bad. The offense didn't have the running game. They were very poor in the running game. I think they were 13th in the league. This year's running game is helping Gunner Stockton out quite a bit, that they're able to run the ball. Georgia had a lot of injuries in that backfield. If you remember, Trevor Etienne had some injury issues. When he was healthy, they beat Texas a couple times. I think he scored 5 touchdowns, and then there were other games he didn't play at all or he played hurt. So, kind of an apples and oranges comparison in terms of what Carson was asked to do versus what Gunner's been asked to do. And Kirby and Mike Bobo have done a nice job of, giving Gunner a good supporting cast, a good run game, good down and distance situations. Yes, they've had to come from behind, but not by, a lot of points. You haven't seen them down, 24 points like they were to Alabama last year. They were down 10, didn't get it done this year, but that's a much more manageable situation. So it all goes together. And I know we want to be able to break this out and make these comparisons, but truly every team is different. And, the level of effectiveness of your defense, your run game, your ability of the receivers. This all goes into how a quarterback's playing. So Gunner's been a part of the growth and the development. This is a team that's been managed really well. It's been coached really well. A lot of these games they've won have been won with coaching. Ultimately, it comes down to 2 or 3 plays, and in most instances, Georgia's been the team that's made those plays.
The way Zachariah Branch got off to a start this year, I thought, okay, Georgia's going to finally have that 1,000-yard receiver that has eluded them for so many years. But 542 right now. We'll see with a couple games left. I don't know if he'll get there, but how much has he helped kind of help open up this offense a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, he's the X factor. He's the go-to guy. I mean, he gets open. Most all those yards are after the catch. Throw a quick pass to him. It's almost like an extension of the run game, right? Hasn't done a lot downfield, and truly Georgia hasn't. If you look at the deep ball, and that's just not something they've excelled at. They lost their top perimeter threat, Colby Young. Broke his leg a couple weeks ago, so he's out for the year. They're having to rely on Noah Thomas, a guy they got through the transfer portal from A&M. Noah didn't do a whole lot the first half of the season. He's been coming on, had a nice 64-yard catch and running against Mississippi State. They're going to need more of that from him. Rely more on the Vanderbilt transfer. London Humphreys, he's in his second year from Vanderbilt. He does some nice things. He's not Ladd McConkey, but he's fast. Of course, he made a great catch against Tennessee on 4th down to help him win that football game. But not really a lot of weapons in the receiving department like a lot of other programs. The tight ends are starting to come on. This was an area they felt like they'd be strong at. Certainly everybody remembers Brock Bowers. They don't have a guy like that, but they've got some pretty good guys that are going to be playing in the NFL. And then the young offensive line has grown and done a better job protecting Gunner. They had some injuries early. I think they went through 6 different offensive line combinations in the first 5 games. Now it's, they've got Ernest Green back. He's the veteran at right tackle. So you're starting to see a little bit more continuity there. Georgia got healthy at the right time. Defensively, the front seven's gotten better. They're doing a better job stopping the run than they did last year. This is helping Georgia get teams off the field quicker, helps with time of possession, game control, a lot of those hidden stats that set the quarterback up to be in a position to just not lose the game, right? Gunner's only thrown 2 picks. You mentioned his numbers aren't crazy, but he's, again, only 2 interceptions, doesn't take a lot of sacks, only taken 10 sacks. Arch Manning, by contrast, 18 sacks, and avoids sacks. So sometimes, Gunner may run for 2 yards and you look into the box score and say, well, that's no big deal, until you realize that could have been an 8-yard loss. And because it was a 2-yard gain, now you're in 2nd and 8. It's a lot more manageable than 2nd and 18, and therefore Georgia with a higher 3rd down conversion percentage than Texas as well.
Yeah, and it also feels like when they get in the red zone, if you drop extra DBs, he's not afraid to tuck in and run in the red zone either, and take a hard hit too. He'll do that as well. One more question on the offense, the run game. I had a friend tell me when Josh McCray was transferring in, I had a buddy who saw him at I think it was Illinois go, oh, this guy's going to be a stud. And yet it's been the in-house guys that have really emerged. Chauncey Bowens and Nate Frazier, obviously in year 2, but Chauncey Bowens, a freshman. And it kind of seems like they've kind of taken turns of who's going to step up and be the guy this week. Is that kind of what you've seen from, it's kind of a 2-headed punch with those two?
Yeah. I mean, it's a matter of opportunity, right? There's only one ball. McCray's been fantastic in short yardage. You saw him win that game at Tennessee. You saw his second effort essentially win the game against Ole Miss. They had a 4th down and it appeared Ole Miss had him stopped and was leading by 2 scores. If Georgia doesn't get that on their end of the field, Ole Miss wins that game, and there's a different narrative. But McCray on second effort really saved that game. So even though the numbers aren't gaudy, this is a guy that's been a key figure in 2 wins on the road against Tennessee and against Ole Miss. So he's done his job. He doesn't have the volume, but you know what? The NFL doesn't necessarily need to see that, right? You see James Cook tearing it up in the NFL. This guy never had more than 106 yards or 12 carries in a game at Georgia. So it's a luxury to have that sort of depth. Kirby manages these guys a certain way. You don't want to put too much work on them early. There's a potential that this could be, a 15-game season, Chris? So if you can rotate and play more guys and keep guys healthy, they get better as the season progresses. They learn the offense. And that's what I'm seeing from Josh McCray. I mean, this guy's going to continue to be a weapon as Georgia goes deeper into the season.
More with Mike Griffith in just a second, but I want to remind you guys about our friends at FanDuel. The NBA is back. No better place to get in on the action than the official sports betting partner of the NBA, and that is with FanDuel. Even if you miss the start of a game, you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel, they got live bets. They got everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. You can do, like we said, in-game bets. You can do spread. You can do underdog straight up. Whoever you want to bet on, you can do that just about every single night with college basketball in action, the NBA in action, of course, college football and pro football still with plenty of weeks to go here. So get in on the action, keeps every game more exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. And FanDuel right now is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com, get signed up, play your game with FanDuel. They are the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And, of course, all those college lines in across the SEC up there right there for you right now. Get in on the action ahead of this weekend with FanDuel.com. We're talking with Mike Griffith from DawgNation.com. Mike, let's get into this one. Round 3 of Sark versus Kirby. We saw it twice last year, and both games were super exciting. Georgia won both of them. Now they finally get them in Athens, a place the Dogs rarely lose outside of that Alabama game earlier this year. But let's talk about this matchup. Texas was a team that was dominant run team last year. Haven't been able to run as consistently this year, but they're coming off their bye week. So to me, that tells me they're hoping these running backs that have been banged up are back healthy, and they're going to try to run the football. What say you?
Yeah, I think you're right? Every quarterback's best friend is the run game. We talked about down and distance, and boy, 2nd and 5 is a lot easier play call than 2nd and 10, right? And so if you can get those 3, 4, 5 yards on first down, stay ahead of the chain, stay on schedule, keep the defense guessing. I mean, if you're sitting there 3rd and 10, everybody in the park knows it's a throw. But if you're there at 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, now the defense got to scheme you up a little bit differently. So the run game is obviously imperative for both of these teams. It's going to be a line of scrimmage game. You mentioned the Sark Kirby deal. Yeah, I mean, Sark was the OC in 2020 at Alabama, I believe, and they tore Georgia up pretty good. So it's not like Sarkisian doesn't know how to call up plays, dial up plays. I mean, this guy's a great offensive mind, but you got to have guys that can execute. And, Texas and Georgia, both teams that had to replace 4 offensive line starters. I think what I would say is Georgia's probably done a better job with that at this point. But again, teams grow. The Longhorns have won, I believe, 4 in a row since losing at Swamp by 8 points. And, oh my gosh, people are aghast at that. But, let's not forget Georgia won a very close game with Florida at a neutral site. Perhaps the game's different in the Swamp. So I don't know how much really separates these two teams. Schedule. Texas lost on the road at Ohio State in the opener. I believe they outgained them by more than 100 yards and still lost. So, all this Big Ten talk's kind of crazy to me. You beat Texas by 7 and Texas lost to Florida by 8 and was outgained. Right. So it is what it is, Chris. We're both kind of going through this college football playoff committee stuff together. It's maddening. It's frustrating. It's hypocritical. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So we have to trust our eyes and see if the SEC can turn out a national champion. And, as of now, Texas and Georgia are still in that race.
Yeah, and that's what, ups the stakes a little bit more for Texas. Georgia can maybe afford another loss, 10-2. I think they still get in, but certainly you don't want to leave it up to those voters to decide. You want to go prove it and earn it on the field. I had somebody ask me last week, Mike, maybe you can answer this question. Why is this Georgia secondary maybe not as dominant as the ones in recent years? And I asked that knowing that Arch Manning comes in. He's been red hot as of late. All their best weapons are wide receivers, Ryan Wingo and company. So we know they're going to try to throw it. But is the vibe been from this Georgia secondary? Maybe it hasn't been as good as the ones in recent years?
Well, again, it's a circumstantial deal. Going into last week's game against Mississippi State, Georgia was last in the SEC with only 8 sacks. And if you don't have pressure, your secondary has to cover for a longer period of time. Georgia's best pass rusher that didn't go to the NFL, Damon Wilson, transferred to Missouri, having a great season. Georgia hasn't really found that one-on-one guy. And, you go back to last year's team, 6 of those 7 guys that played in the front 7 are on NFL rosters now. So there was a pretty big reload on their front 7. And they don't really have that elite pass rusher. It's only been of late, that they've been able to really get a pass rush going and help that secondary out. There's been an injury in the secondary. Georgia lost one of their starting safeties, Kyron Jones, broken foot. He was a guy who made a big play against Auburn. So your depth is being challenged a little bit. I think 3 of the 5 guys haven't even started a full season. I mean, KJ Bolden's considered a veteran, and he's got 11 starts. He's only a sophomore. Dalen Everett's a lockdown guy. I know that's a name Texas fans will remember. He made a couple big plays there. Jonel Aguero, the star, kind of that safety / linebacker guy. He's starting to come around, but he's not at the same level that Tyke Smith, one of the NFL tackle leaders in the NFL, with the Tampa Bay Bucks, used to be for Georgia. So they're not getting quite as much production out of that position. Look, the portal's taking its hits. There's guys that if they were still at Georgia, would be starting. They're starting at Penn State or they're starting at Syracuse now, and they would have been next man up. Instead, when Kirby talks about coaching up the bottom of the roster, the bottom's a little bit deeper. A lot of those guys that were second team went somewhere else for surefire first team jobs, and that's led to this parity. So to your point, no, they're not an all-star collection like they were in 21 and 22, but really, Chris, nobody is, it seems like.
I think the big question Mike Urban wants to know is if there's a bad call in this one, will Georgia fans throw stuff on the field? Will we get that this year? Do you think that might happen?
Yeah, I haven't seen it at Sanford Stadium.
Yeah.
I did see the goalpost go down there when they ended a streak against Tennessee about 23, 24 years ago. I don't think the goalposts have come down since. Sanford Stadium, I'm not going to say it's tame. It can be very loud. It's caused problems before. It's factored into big wins. Think back to 2019 Notre Dame, 6 false starts. I think the 2022 Tennessee-Georgia game, a couple of number ones. The College Football Playoff Committee's number one Tennessee against the AP in the coaches poll. And, they were affected greatly by the crowd noise. So it can get really loud in Sanford Stadium. But as far as the throwing of objects and, what we saw at Texas, and, boy, that was sure disappointing. As much hype as Texas got, we'd held the media days there in Dallas, and, there was a great deal of momentum. I thought the city of Dallas did an incredible job representing Texas. You hear so much about Texas tradition and what a first-class institution it is. And then when they're in the moment of the spotlight, the fans really, really had a bad moment there. That I think that was the first impression that Texas made on the SEC. It was not a good one.
But it worked. They got the flag picked up. So we'll see if that happens again. If something like that happens again, we'll ask one for you, Mike, and really appreciate your time. All these open SEC coaching jobs, I keep seeing all the names I keep seeing are current head coaches, and Saban's name getting thrown in there. But I'm a little surprised. Like Kirby waited his time, and got the perfect job at Georgia, and he's been awesome. Why are we not hearing Glenn Schumann's name more? We saw what Dan Lanning's done at Oregon, obviously, but I'm a little surprised. Like, why not look at the pedigree and the assistants under Kirby? Like Glenn Schumann, I know his name's come up a couple times, but like I figured this guy would be like a hot commodity out there.
He's a little younger. He's got a pretty, good sized family, young family here. I don't know Glenn's level of interest. Let's face it, the last 2 years haven't been great for the defense. There's some question. He's coached at Alabama and Georgia. Dan Lanning's a guy that had been a lot of places, right? And I don't know that Glenn's really been anywhere except for places with more talent than the other team. And Kirby's still pretty heavily involved in the defense. Will Muschamp had been heavily involved in the defense. So I think that may give some programs pause. And I think the kind of job that Glenn's waiting for isn't coming after him yet. I don't think he's going to take one of those mid-major jobs or a low-level SEC job like in Arkansas. That's a tough job, right? I think it all kind of topples down from whatever Lane Kiffin does. It looks to me, I'm not reporting this, but all indications from what I've heard is that he'll go to Florida. I know there was some people that were saying, he's got a grade at Ole Miss, but I don't think it comes down to that. I think it comes down to where he and his family want to be, and he's kind of a Florida guy. So I think it has to do with where you want to live in that situation for Lane. If you can go anywhere you want, you got plenty of money. Obviously Ole Miss has been great for him. I think it would be in his best interest to stay there because I know the level of scrutiny at Florida. I know the expectations are unreasonable. But look, if the guy wants to go there and his family wants to be there, then that's probably what will happen. So then where does it go from there? Does Auburn hire John Summerall? Is it that open shut? We know their major booster is also a booster at Troy, and the guy was there. That would seem like a logical hire. Who wants LSU now? You see the political influence, the fire, very difficult places. Kirby Smart said when he was there, they say, look, that's not your office. You're just borrowing it. And if you're not winning, and again, another program with unrealistic expectations, they had 3 consecutive coaches win titles. The Nick Saban talk, it's probably real. I think, $20 million a year, it'd be hard to say no to that kind of money. They can say whatever they want. And, I just don't know how much use, Nick Saban is sitting next to, some clown on TV on Saturdays. I mean, this is the greatest coach of our era. So why wouldn't he want to be on the sideline and rebuild at a place that he knows has in-state talent, that he knows will give him the kind of money that he needs to win a national championship? Do you really think he wants to go out with his final game being a loss to Michigan? That's not the way that movie's supposed to end. So we'll see if that talk, matriculates into Saban taking that job. That would be fascinating. Not shocking to me. I thought that if Ohio State didn't win the national title last year, they would have gone all in on Nick Saban, and he would have had a chance to kind of right that wrong, having a bad start to his career there once before. So, I buy into that kind of stuff, Chris. Those storylines, maybe I covered NASCAR too long, and it always seemed like the guy that needed to win would win, and the story would work out great. And, it just seems like that's just kind of how life works in college football. We'll see. This Texas-Georgia game is intriguing to me. I just can't believe it'll be that easy. Texas has found a way, and I know some of it's been ugly. I know they needed overtime in a couple games, but welcome to the new SEC, where if you think about it, if we're going to call Texas A&M the top team in the league, which right now they are, and if we're going to call Arkansas the bottom team in the league, which right now they are, 3 points separated them.
Right. No, and that's what I say. Like, it's the hallmark of a great conference. When the bottom team can beat the top team on any given day, that's better than just having three teams that are undefeated. That's the strength of a conference. He is Mike Griffith, the guy that every time I put on Feinbaum, he's on there somehow. I don't know how you do. You must go on every hour with Feinbaum. But Mike, always appreciate the time, man. You do a great job at DawgNation, and really appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you.
Hey, a message from our friends over at Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today. See parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business and their real-time inventory and honest lead times. They're going to keep you from punting on projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts for a project, Supply House, they got next day delivery. Talk about a game changer. And their part finder tools online include 3D schematics. It's going to save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Join the free Trademaster program today, and you're going to score some serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line if you need help. Visit supplyhouse.com. Sign up for free and use our promo code SHCollege5. That'll get you 5% off your first order. That is at supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. All right, run along here to Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Thanks again to Mike Griffith for joining us from DawgNation. Want to touch on a couple of tidbits here around the SEC before we call it a show. And I thought this was pretty interesting. Eli Drinkwitz yesterday making some news on his coach's show, Tiger Talk, his radio show, was talking about the day and age we're living in, where basically with the 12-team playoff now, it's basically, for most teams in the SEC, if you got a good team and on high expectations, it's playoff or bust. It's either you're making the playoff or you're not. And it was pretty interesting to hear Drinkwitz's quotes. He said, talked about this at SEC Media Days, but we got to get out of this, oh man, it's playoff or bust mentality. He said, look, we're shooting for the moon. We're going to put ourselves into that. But only 12 teams make the playoffs at the end of the day. If the season only counts for 12 football teams and we have 127 Division I playing football teams, that math is not going to math very well. And look, he's saying this after taking his third loss and being basically eliminated from the playoffs. So I get the hypocritical stance here that a lot of people will point out for Drinkwitz, but it is something that I've talked about. Like, we got to get back to enjoying some of the other aspects of college football. Like, take a week, enjoy the games, enjoy the journey. That's what makes this fun. I get it's supposed to be playoff and trying to go win a national championship, but we got to not look down on things like the Citrus Bowl or making a New Year's Six Bowl that's not a playoff game or whatever. Like, those are viewed as crappy consolation prizes. Like, oh, the Citrus Bowl, who wants to go play in that? That's the best bowl game for an SEC team that doesn't make the playoff. I mean, if you went 8-4, Granted, I guess it's all about expectations and what you had on the season. If you were supposed to be a 10-2 team and you go 8-4, yeah, I guess that's disappointing. But at the end of the day, a lot of coaches do use that marker of, can we get to our 10th win, right? Can we get that 10 win? Coaches at the end of the season, they can win that bowl game and they go, oh, we had back-to-back 10-win seasons. Think about it. That's what we talked about Drinkwitz and Lane Kiffin the last couple of years as a measure for success. Neither Missouri or Ole Miss even played for an SEC championship the last couple of years, but we looked at it and said that was a successful season because they had 10-win seasons. But for Drinkwitz, like we said, sitting at 6-3, they're going to have their senior day this weekend, their final home game against Mississippi State. And I get it. It seems like it's crying over spilled milk because you got eliminated. But Drinkwitz, let a lot of fans and analysts around the country have adopted this playoff or bust. And I kind of agree with them that we need to kind of not look at that, as the only measure of success now, because look, if you're in Alabama, that is going to be the measure every year. But if you're an Auburn or, some of those teams in the middle of the pack in the SEC that are supposed to be middle of the pack, every few years, I think the expectation should be to make the playoff. Adam Luckett from KSR said, he tweeted this out. He said, fans at mid-tier power conference programs aren't going to be smitten at 8-4 or 9-3 in a vacuum. It's all about making a CFP or building towards a season where you can make the CFP. Getting to random bowl game is not going to be praised like it once was. And that's the tough part, man, is, it used to be you had the good bowl games in the SEC and then it was like, oh, I hope we don't go to the Liberty Bowl or something like that. Well, now they all seem crappy again. All right. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Or thanks again to Mike Griffith. And hey, a reminder, you can check us out wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube, and of course, daily on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. If you live in Louisiana, Mississippi, or Alabama, catch us weekdays at 11:30 a.m. Central on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network.